Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 150. 150 is a good number, and it just feels like I should be doing something special with episode 150, but I just didn't plan anything, so I feel like 150 is a big deal. It's a big number of turning on the microphone and not missing an episode and just showing up. So I'm just going to celebrate by saying, pat on the back, Michael. Thank you all for listening so much. I really appreciate you tuning in to me every week, and let's get into this. So quick announcements. So I'm bringing back Writing Power Hours. So this Saturday, January 23rd at 10 a.m. Central Time, you can join me as I dictate my novel. Yeah, I was going to announce that. I'm going to dictate my novel live. I won't be showing what's on my screen, but you'll be seeing me talking. I'll be sure to keep my microphone on mute. But I'm going to be dictating from my Writing Power Hour. You can join me and type, and if you want to dictate too, you can do that. But we're going to bring it back. So December was just kind of a crappy month for doing it. So this Saturday, January 23rd at 10 a.m., I've included a link to the Power Hour so you can go there and get a reminder if it happens to be before that. So a reminder will pop up on your phone or on your computer, depending on where you watch YouTube. And for those of you who are not in the Central Time Zone, if you're wondering, hey, what time is that if you just happen to be halfway across the world? I also included a link to the World Clock Time Zone Converter so you can find out if it is something you can attend or if it's maybe outside of your bedtime. But I'm surprised at how many people all over the world actually watch replays. So people said that, hey, I like watching these Writing Power Hours. They're calming. So if you don't attend live, that's okay too, but you can also catch the replay. And the link is in the show notes. And then starting February, we're going to start going the first week of every month. So first Saturday of every month will be when I start doing the Power Hours. So the feedback I got from folks was, hey, I would love to go to these Power Hours, but I just kind of want to know in advance when they're going to be so that I can plan around it. So now February 1st, first week of first Saturday of every month. All right. Now, wins for the week. I don't know if this is a win or not. I'm just going to call it, and maybe I'm jinxing myself. Maybe I'm going to ruin my superstitions. I don't know if this is going to be true or not by the time this goes live, but I think I will have finished the novel I'm working on by the time this goes live at midnight Thursday. I don't know yet because I'm still finishing this book. I thought I was supposed to be done over the weekend, and that didn't happen. This final battle I'm writing ended up being a lot longer than I thought. And yeah, so I've been writing regularly every day. It's just that the novel is turning out to be longer than I thought. That's never a bad problem, but it does mean that I don't know if I'm going to be done with this book this week or not. But I'm just going to say I'm done with my novel. And if I am, it's a win for the week. If not, I'm almost done with another novel. I consider that to be a win. Now, lesson learned this week. I don't know if you've heard the Creative Pin this week or not, but Joanna did a great interview with a author and data scientist. And I apologize if I get his name wrong, but I believe it is Jaya Wijeratne. And he is a Sri Lankan author. And I should know how to pronounce his name, but I can't remember how he said it. So, but super cool guy. I mean, just great writer. He's one that shares his knowledge and experience with the community, which, I don't know how you don't give someone props for doing that. And he's also a data scientist, and he's got a pretty legit street cred in his professional life. And the interview was really cool because he actually used AI to help him write his novel. So I believe the way he described it was he basically created some sort of an engine. I don't know what the right term would be, but it basically helped him create a galaxy. And there's this particular planet that the characters are on, and he used AI to help him generate what the weather is on any given chapter. And the way he described it, that kind of was like light bulbs going off for me is, he didn't think about it so much as helping him generate the story, but almost like a consultant, that there's always something there that he can refer to every time he's writing. And I just thought that was really insightful. And honestly, I thought it was a super insightful interview. Joanna always does insightful interviews. There's no such thing as a bad Joanna Penn interview, but this is probably one of the more memorable ones that she's done in a really long time. So I'll drop a link in the show notes to that for anyone who wants to check that out. And I wanted to talk about an idea of the week. This is an idea. I talk about stuff so much, I don't remember when I talk about it or where I talk about it. I'm pretty sure I talked about this on the show at some point, but the idea that I want to share with you is this concept of a novel fact checker. So I mentioned this, I think it was maybe last month. It was this idea of like a genre consultant. And I was talking about how I watched the movie Soul by Pixar, and they hired consultants to help them get the African American characters right and get the jazz and stuff like that right. And that got me thinking about, okay, well, that's a really great idea. But what if you could do that with like a novel and other areas of a novel? I had to do some editing and things like that. And for some reason, my machine wasn't working properly. But what I wanted to talk about was this idea of novel fact checkers. And the way that this worked in my head was that I've got a few different areas of the novel that I want to make sure that I get them right, but I don't have the subject matter expertise. And if you think about most novels, I bet every novel you write probably has 2 or 3 areas where it's like, I really could use some help, just like another person's help, like another person's set of eyes, another set of eyes on the manuscript to make sure that you get some things right. And so I decided to do something that I've never actually done before, not formally. And what I did was I basically put out a call for fact checkers. And at first I called them consultants, but that's really not what they are. They're just fact checkers. They just check what's there to make sure that what is there is accurate. And so I had 2 sets of fact checkers. The first set of fact checkers was for the city itself. So the novel I'm writing takes place in Chicago. I've been to Chicago many times, used to travel there for work quite a bit, and I've been there for vacations. I mean, it's only 3 hours from Des Moines. So I'm fairly familiar with the city itself, but I've never lived there. So there were some things that I wanted to make sure that I got right, like public transit, just some of the landmarks, things like that. So I put out a call on just in my network and then on a place called Upwork.com for Chicago, people who live or who have lived in the city of Chicago, who have spent a lot of time there. And basically what I said is, I'm not going to give you the whole novel, but here's what the novel is about. I'm going to give you snippets from the novel, which ended up being, I think, like 10 or 15 pages, and it was just the parts that had Chicago focused stuff in it. So like, okay, would a person from Chicago, would they cry BS, or would they be like, oh yeah, that's right, that's accurate? All right. And I sent it to them, and then I asked for their feedback. And they, within a couple of days, sent me the feedback and said, hey, yeah, you got this right. This is absolutely right. I agree 100% with how you portrayed this, or that makes sense based on how you would do it. Or yeah, a character would go from point A to point B using, the blue line, train, that sort of thing. And then they called out stuff that was wrong. And there was some stuff that was quite wrong, like the public transit. And so they helped me get that right. So now ultimately readers will be the ultimate judge of whether a story is good or not. And there might be some Chicago readers that take quibble with some of the things in there. I don't know, but at least I know I've done all I could to get the city right. All right. And then the second set of fact checkers has to do with a certain animal that features very prominently in the story, which is rats. And so I basically, they're in the process of looking at it right now, looking at certain sections from the book that feature rats prominently, and they're taking a look at it and saying, okay, this is right, is it wrong, biologically, would a rat see this or not see that? And so they're working on that for me as well. So I basically took 2 subject matter areas. where I've done a lot of research, but I just need somebody to kind of fact check and validate the research that I've done. And this has been so successful, at least I think it was successful for me because I felt like the story was demonstrably better as a result of the feedback that the fact checkers gave. So I felt so good about it that it is now going to be a cornerstone in my editing moving forward. So it's an idea for you. Certainly use your network. I mean, there's always someone in your community probably that has the experience that you're looking for. I have not once put out a call on either on this show or on my YouTube blog for somebody that has a certain level of expertise and somebody not emailed me, right? And I have a relatively small audience, and so it's definitely something you can do. You can also pay for this if you dare do that. You know, I ask for very, very quick turnarounds, and so recognizing that people aren't going to stop what they're doing for me, you know, and that they have families and that they have jobs and they're probably writing books of their own. You know, I'm always one to offer a little bit of cash just to ensure that I get what I need quickly, and that gives them a good incentive to do it too, and put some money in their pockets. And I find that it increases the quality of the feedback as well. So just consider that. You know, especially if you're writing something like historical fiction or something that you've never written before, I think it's a really smart idea, and we'll see if it works. It may not work, I don't know. But anyway, topic of the week this week. I wanted to talk about a post that I made last week on my blog, and I wanted to kind of expand on that for this audience, because I recognize that not everyone reads my blog. And this post got a lot of engagement, and I was talking about learning a new writing method, and I was also talking about the many different ways in which you can write your novel, which there are probably more ways than you think. And so I made a post last week. I don't remember what it was called. It's really not important because I'm going to cover everything I talked about in the post here. But essentially, one day on my YouTube post, a subscriber had asked me, hey, do you know anything about Dragon Anywhere? And Dragon Anywhere is an iPhone app. I think it might exist for Android as well. It is a mobile app of the famed Dragon by Nuance Software, which a lot of people use to dictate their books. And it's available on your phone. It's a subscription base, and essentially it brings the Dragon level accuracy to your phone so that you can dictate on the go if you wanted to do that. And I actually had used Dragon Anywhere a couple of years ago. I think it was right when it first came out, and I wasn't really a big fan of it. I didn't think that the app worked that well, and I didn't think that the accuracy was all that good compared to what you could get on the desktop. And so I kind of just wrote it off. But then a little voice in the back of my head said, hey, Michael, maybe you should check this out again. Maybe things have gotten a little bit better, because I'm dictating my novel currently with Dragon. So I was like, hey, why not check out Dragon Anywhere? And so I downloaded a free trial, and I was just kind of messing around with it. And I dictated a chapter of my novel while I was doing dishes one morning. Like, my wife was running errands, so the house was quiet. And I was doing dishes, and I was doing laundry, and I dictated about, I think it was like 300 or 400 words. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was a decent amount. And I checked what I had, because the interesting thing about it is that if you're dictating on the go, you're probably not looking at your screen. So I actually was not looking at my screen at all. So I was doing my dishes, just thinking about what I was going to say, and then I said it. And it was actually fairly accurate. There were more errors than if I had dictated or if I had handwritten it, but there weren't that many more errors. And so I was like, okay, this is really cool. I was doing chores, killing two birds with one stone, and I got like 300 to 400 words out of this. So I was like, okay, I'm a believer in this. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to make my wife happy, and I'm going to do dishes twice today. And I actually dictated longer, and I got like 600 words out of it. And so that made me a believer in Dragon Anywhere compared to a few years ago when it really wasn't that good, in my opinion. And so that day actually ended up being one of the best word count days I had in a long time. And it was an interesting day because the word counts were really, really diverse. So I wrote 5,200 words on that particular day. And that's not my all-time best. My all-time best is just somewhere slightly north of 10,000. Um, but hey, 5,000 is not bad when you've been having 2 or 3,000 word days. So this was a really, really good day, especially for fiction. That's a fantastic number for fiction, especially when you consider that I write clean and only do it in one draft. So I crushed it word wise, and that felt really good. And so I wanted to offer a breakdown of my writing sessions that day because it was really interesting. It was probably one of the more diverse days I had for a really long time, and it got me thinking about all the different ways you can write, and why this is just such a great time to be a writer. All right, so I started writing. This was on a Saturday, and I started writing about 9 o'clock. So I got up, I think about 8:30. Started writing about 9 o'clock, and this is when I started experimenting with Dragon Anywhere. So I used Dragon Anywhere to untether myself from my phone so I could dictate while I did laundry and the morning round of dishes. And this got me about 250 words. All right, and the words were a little sloppy, and I wasn't really happy with that. They were a little sloppier than I liked, but I think I chalk it up to still getting used to not seeing what you're saying. Because when you're writing with your hands on your computer, you see what you're typing. When you're dictating, most people, they're looking at their screen. In this case, I was not actually doing that. So I think there's a learning curve that I have to kind of endure with that. But, if you guys know I'm not a fan of writing sloppy, but if you are going to write a little sloppy, I can handle it with 250 word sections. That's not the end of the world because I'm going to have to go back through and loop it anyway. All right. So then that was the first session. And then I had 2 good dictation sessions at my desk. So in those sessions, I was standing up and walking around, and that got me about 2,000 words before breakfast. So that was 2,000 additional words. That brought my total count up to 2,250 for the day. And then I wrote, I don't know what the situation was, but I couldn't be downstairs on my computer, so I chose to write on my phone. I think it was because my daughter went outside to play in the snow, and I was kind of supervising her. So I wrote 1,000 words on my phone while I was kind of watching my daughter play outside, and that was just for a small period of time. So that brought my total word count to 1,000 or 3,250. And then I had an opportunity, like I said, to use Dragon Anywhere again to dictate my story while I did the dishes for the second time after lunch, and then vacuum the entire first floor of my house. And that netted me another 250 words, though I technically dictated 500 to 600. Dragon Anywhere has this really weird thing where it'll stop listening if your phone display goes dark, which I don't like about it. But it does have a feature where it'll beep at you if that happens, and I didn't know that existed. So I was literally talking to myself for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. So I technically did more than that, but I got 250 out of it. All right, and so then the rest of the word counts that day, so that brought me up to like 3,500. And then the rest of it was just at my desk, typing out my story by hand. So that got me to about 5,200 words. And those were, for the most part, all good words. So no sloppiness for the most part, no having to go back and rewrite anything other than just going back and looping and just making sure that everything is what needs to be there, and maybe expanding a few things here and there, cutting some things here and there, but nothing substantial. All right, and the words that I wrote that day were actually really important too, and I didn't realize how important they were until the end of the day. But I'm pretty much close to the end of my novel, and these words actually laid the groundwork for book 2. And I didn't know it at the time. Like, I was literally just making this stuff up. There was a character I created literally on the top of my head while I was doing my dishes, who's going to feature prominently in book 2, and I had no idea that this character would exist, and that was really interesting. So that count on Saturday put my total word counts for the week at around 16,000 words. So, a fair amount of the words I wrote that week, I wrote that day, which I thought was great. And so that got me thinking, man, this is really, really cool. There's so many different ways to write your novel, and I wrote my novel with quite a bit of them in just one day. I mean, what would have made the day perfect is if I had found the time to get on my exercise bike and dictate that way. That would, I think, would have just made it perfect, but I didn't do that. So it got me thinking about the different ways you can write your novel. And the first way is the way that some people like to do, and that's cool, and that's handwriting. So I know there's a lot of people in my audience who they like to sit down and maybe it's a first draft, or they just like to write something by hand, because there's something about the brain and writing with a hand that just makes your story feel a little bit different. It's not for me, but it's valid nonetheless. And then there's also writing on your computer. So using Scrivener, Ulysses, Microsoft Word, Dabble, you name the writing app, you can write on your computer, and that's how the majority of people do it, writing on their computer by hand. And that's a classical, traditional way of writing your story. And I imagine that most of you, 99% of you, that is your primary way of writing. But that's not the only way. There's also being able to write on your phone and or on your tablet. So you guys know that I spend a lot of time on the go, and I get a lot of my words in on my phone. Just like I said, I was on my couch watching my daughter play outside in the snow, and I got 1,000 words out of that. All right, and so that is a great option for people who are very busy, or for people who are away from their computer for large periods of time throughout the day, but who still want to get some productivity. And you can write on your phone in two ways too. There's different ways of doing it. One way to do this is to write using your thumbs. That's the way that I do it. Another way is to write using a Bluetooth keyboard. So there are options, And then the next way is dictation on your computer. So I use Dragon. I have a microphone boom arm. I just slide the microphone over, turn on Dragon, and start speaking my story. And I can do that sitting down. I can do that standing up. I can do that walking around my office. My microphone still picks up my voice clear as day. And that is a great way to write more words faster, because you speak faster than you type. Now, the only thing about dictation, and some people have rightly called this out, is when you first start, it kind of feels, first off, you got to learn how to talk a different way. Like you have to say, Michael went to the store, period, new line, open quote. Michael's, what are you doing? Close quote, that sort of thing. It feels really, really weird, but it becomes second nature after a while. But you do have to learn how to talk differently, and then you have to learn how to speak what's on your mind and get that onto the page, which for some people is a very big roadblock, but it's not an insurmountable one. Like I said, I've dictated probably 50 to 60% of this novel I'm writing now off the top of my head. So, it can be done. And that is it's a viable option. A lot of people are turning to it. And a great thing about dictation too is it helps you with repetitive stress injuries. So if you're somebody that you want to avoid carpal tunnels, or maybe you've had carpal tunnel surgery in the past, or maybe your back or your neck hurts if you sit down for too long a period of time, dictation is great because you can dictate in any position, and you don't have to worry about that repetitive stress. And then this is the mode that I found after when I started using Dragon Anywhere, and this is something I never really thought about, and that's dictating on your phone or tablet. I guess I never thought about that. I'm so grateful to the subscriber that had asked me that question, because it kind of blew open a totally different way of writing. So, you could, if you wanted to, just dictate on your phone and just stare at it. That's kind of boring. It's kind of weird. I think you get more mileage for your time if you dictate on your phone while you're doing something. So like I said, I was doing dishes, I was doing laundry, I vacuumed my house, things that historically, or I shouldn't say historically, but usually when you're doing them, you're not usually not doing anything else. But when I do dishes, it's kind of like autopilot for me. Like, honestly, I'm usually listening to podcasts anyway. And we only have so many dishes in our house. They go in the dishwasher the same way, and there's some of them you just got to do manually. I mean, like I said, it's just kind of autopilot for me, so I don't really think about it that much when I'm doing it. And when I'm vacuuming, I really don't have to think that much when I'm vacuuming. If I'm walking my dog around the block, during the day at least, I usually don't have to think too much about that unless there's another dog on the street and then my dog goes crazy. That's a different story. But most of the time, it's pretty serene. And so, if you're going to be dictating while doing stuff that you already know how to do, like I said, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. Now, I recognize that I kind of have an intense personality. Most people are not like me. Writing is one of the only things I think about when I'm not working or, with family. So for me, it's just how do I become more productive? And putting your phone in your pocket and then dictating is really, really cool. And then also I'll talk about how I did this. Now you could, if you wanted to, just keep your phone at a short amount of distance from your mouth. I actually did not do that. I have a pair of Bluetooth headphones, and I noticed that it picked up, Dragon Anywhere picked up my voice from the headphones, which was really cool because I actually put my phone on my kitchen counter and I walked all throughout my basement, all throughout my first floor and then second floor of my house, and picked it up just fine. So if you use a Bluetooth, you can be a relatively inexpensive Bluetooth headset. You can get, like I said, you can get a lot of mileage for your money if you do this. Now, again, this is a lot tougher than dictating on your computer and staring at it, though, because one, you've got to do what you're doing, so you have to multitask. So you got to do your dishes or laundry or whatever. Then you got to figure out what to say, and then you got to say it a certain way. And there's kind of no, like, if you make a mistake, you just make a mistake. Like, you can't go back because you can't see what you did, So you kind of have to you kind of just have to be okay with making mistakes and just moving forward. It's an interesting muscle. I happen to like it. It's not for everybody. All right. And then the last one, this is the holy grail of writing methods, in my opinion. This is one that I would love to do this one day. I'm just not there yet. This is like a method for the masters. All right. And that's dictation via transcription. So I think it's Kevin J. Anderson wrote a book. It's called On Being a Dictator. And I would highly recommend this book. He talks about this method. What he does is he has a voice recorder and he goes on like a 2-mile hike or something like that with his dog, like every day that he can. And while he's on a 2-mile hike, he speaks into this voice recorder and he speaks his stories into the voice recorder. And then what he does is when he gets home, he uploads the audio and then hires a transcriptionist who then writes down what he said and gets everything organized into paragraphs and all that. And then he goes back through it and updates it. I don't know if he outlines or not. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't, just kind of knowing how prolific he is. That's crazy. That's a crazy method because one, you don't know what you're going to talk about. And then two, like I said, you're going to make mistakes and you kind of just have to deal with it. So to be able to write clean that way is just amazing. I mean, I read another book by a guy. I can't think of his name. He did something that kind of made me shake in my boots a little bit. Like I read it and I was like, this guy is a master. So here's what he did. He went to a author conference and then he basically said, watch me live while I dictate a story off the top of my head in front of an entire audience. And he did just that. He would walk around a stage with a little headset on and a little recorder, and he would make up a story just out of nowhere. And people would just, like, their jaws would drop. And then what he would do is when he finished it, he would have a transcriptionist, take care of it and do all that. And then he would make some minor edits, and then he would email the story out to all, or he might have even like put a cover on it and, made it a book, like a little mini book, and email it out to all the participants of the conference afterward. That, my friends, is next level. Like, it's one thing to write into the dark and not outline and have no support system. It's another thing entirely to do that in front of an audience, fluid. Like, that's that's crazy. Like, my hat goes off to people that can do that. I would love to be able to do that one day. And I think dictating on your phone and then not having your screen there, I think that's a really good baby step to working up to that. yeah, I mean, just so many different methods that you can use. And, there's really no excuse to not experiment. Just play around with stuff and see what works. You might find that maybe writing by hand that's your jam, but you never thought it would be. But like for me, I like to think about this as picking your writing method based on your situation. And your situation is fluid depending on your lifestyle. So like for me, for example, if I'm in front of my computer, I can choose to write by hand, or I can dictate, or I can get on my bike. Depends on how I feel, if I'm upstairs and can't be in front of my computer and I don't want to lug my laptop upstairs, I write on my phone. If I'm at the doctor's office, I write on my phone. So it just becomes a muscle that you use, and you can flex that muscle on demand, And so now if I'm doing my laundry or doing my dishes, I can just dictate if I want to, or if I decide one day I want to, do the Holy Grail method, I can walk my dog and I can speak a story or a short story or an essay or something about writing, and then upload it to a transcriptionist if I have the kind of cash to do that. I don't, but that requires some money, but it's an option. It's an option nonetheless. And how cool is it that you can flex your muscle and build that muscle on all of these different methods without really having to spend all that much money. And this way, your writing method, like I said, it fits you like a glove. And you never have to worry about being in a situation where you can't write. All that matters is breaking down that mental roadblock. If you're worried about dictating and sounding like a fool, you can get past that. If you're worried about your handwriting and making sure it looks good, you can improve your handwriting. If you're worried about finding the right writing app on your computer, there's tons of them out there. They're a dime a dozen, and they're not that expensive. Dictating, that's going to cost you a little bit of money, but it's really not that expensive in the grand scheme of things compared to how much faster you can write. And so I just encourage people to find the way that works best for you. This is why this is a golden age of writing. This is the best time in the history of the world to be a writer. Never in the past has anybody been able to say, okay, I can write based on where I am. That is, to me, that's freeing. Like, I love that. That gets me really excited, because that means that no matter where I am, what I'm doing, what my medical condition is, I can still be productive, and that is like I said, it's a beautiful thing. And maybe some of the things I said in this episode are making some light bulbs go off in your head. But with that, I'm done for the week. I hope that you guys have a fantastic week. Hope you can join me with my Power Hour on Saturday. Don't forget that the link is in the description or the show notes. And I'll talk to you next week. Peace. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.